There's something quietly painful about knowing someone is watching you without saying a word. And if you've landed on this reading today, I think part of you already knows that's exactly what's happening. You feel it. That strange awareness, like a presence lingering just outside a door that never opens. You check your views, you notice the patterns, and then you put your phone down and try to convince yourself it means nothing. But it doesn't feel like nothing, does it? Take a breath. Because what's coming through right now is layered. It's complicated. And some of what I'm about to share might surprise you, not because it's shocking, but because it's going to confirm something you already felt in your body and weren't sure you were allowed to trust. Let's sit with this energy for a moment. The very first thing I'm picking up is this magnetic pull. And I want to be really clear, this isn't just coming from you. This is a two-way current. There is a connection between you and this person that hasn't dissolved. It hasn't cleaned itself up and walked away neatly. It's still alive in some form, still humming at a frequency that both of you can feel even when you're not in the same room, even when you haven't spoken in weeks or months. This energy is almost restless. Like something that wants to move but doesn't know which direction to go. And what's so interesting about this is that the person who's watching your social media, this person who keeps coming back to your profile, your stories, your photos, they're not doing it casually. I want you to hear that. This is not a passive scroll. This is intentional. There's something almost ritualistic about how they return. They're checking in not because it's convenient, but because they can't stop themselves. And that matters. I'm hearing something like, I just want to see how you're doing, and on the surface that sounds innocent. But underneath it, underneath that story they're telling themselves, there's something much more honest trying to surface. It's not just about seeing how you're doing. It's about seeing if you've moved on. It's about seeing if the version of you that exists in their memory still matches the version of you they see in your posts. They're looking for evidence of something. They're not even entirely sure what. Does this feel familiar to you? That sense of someone watching from a distance, maintaining this silent proximity, choosing presence without contact? Here's where it gets emotionally complex. And for some of you in this collective, this is the part that's going to hit the hardest. This person is carrying a wound. And that wound, it has something to do with pride. With ego. With the story they've constructed about what happened between you and who was right and who was wrong. I'm feeling a real heaviness here, almost like someone who argued themselves into a corner and now they don't know how to argue their way back out. They said things, or they did things, or they let things go unsaid, and now that silence has calcified around them like armor. The wounded pride energy is so strong right now. And I want to say something gently but honestly, this is one of the core reasons there's no message in your inbox despite all the watching. Because sending a message would require them to admit something. It would require a kind of vulnerability that right now feels like losing. And something in them, something stubborn, something protective, is not ready to lose. But here's the paradox that's coming through, and it's almost a little heartbreaking. They don't actually feel like they're winning. Watching you from a distance isn't triumphant. It's actually its own kind of longing dressed up in a costume of indifference. The silence isn't power. The silence is confusion wearing a mask. I'm sensing someone who goes back and forth a lot internally. Someone who maybe picks up their phone to type something and then puts it down again. Someone who rehearses conversations in their head, has entire arguments, entire reconciliations, entire confessions, and then closes the app before any of it becomes real. The distance they're maintaining isn't because they've found peace. It's because they're afraid of what honesty might cost them. And for some of you watching today, this isn't just about a person you're longing for. This is also information. This is the universe showing you the interior of someone who hasn't done the work yet to come to you cleanly. There's something I need to address here because it's coming through very strongly and I don't want to skip past it. This connection, whatever it was, whatever it became, was meant to teach you something. And I know that can sound like a spiritual platitude, something people say to soften pain, but the energy around what I'm calling the divine separation in this reading is not a platitude. It's actually quite precise. The distance that exists between you right now, the ending that happened even if it didn't happen cleanly, even if it left questions, it was purposeful. Not in a cruel way. Not in a way that means the connection wasn't real or that the love wasn't genuine. But in the way that some things in our lives are perfectly calibrated to push us toward a version of ourselves we could not have reached without being cracked open first. The energy keeps repeating something here: you were never meant to shrink to fit inside that story. And I want to sit with that for a second, because for some of you in this collective, what I'm seeing is that this relationship, as beautiful as parts of it were, was also a place where you made yourself smaller. Where you waited longer than you should have. Where you gave more than was given back. Where you translated your own needs into something quieter so they could be more acceptable. And the ending, as painful as it was, as unfinished as it still feels, it severed you from a pattern that was slowly diminishing you. The person watching your social media? They're not watching the version of you that shrank. They're watching you become something. And that is terrifying to someone who isn't growing alongside you. Now, let's talk about the unfinished feeling. Because I know so many of you came here today because of that. That sensation of a story that just stopped in the middle of a sentence. No punctuation. No resolution. Just an abrupt silence where something used to live. This is real. This energy is completely valid. And what I want you to understand is that the incompleteness you feel isn't just your imagination, and it isn't weakness. The story between you and this person does have threads that were never tied. There are things that were never said on both sides. There are moments that almost happened and didn't. There are feelings that were expressed but not received, or received but not acknowledged. And here's what's interesting: the person who's watching you silently? They feel this too. Possibly more acutely than you realize. Because they're the one who's made themselves the observer in this dynamic. They're watching a story they're no longer part of. And there's something almost surreal about that experience, to have been so close to someone, to have been inside their world, and now to be watching their life like a window you can see through but can't open. This is interesting, because at first I was reading this energy as them being cold or detached, but now it feels more like someone standing outside in the cold, choosing not to knock. The unfinished story isn't driving you crazy because you need closure from them. It's driving you crazy because something in you knows the story of who you are is still being written. And you're ready to write it. You're ready to move forward. But there's a part of you that keeps checking over your shoulder, not necessarily because you want them back in the way you did before, but because you want to understand what happened. You want the ending to make sense. I'm going to offer you something, and take what resonates. Sometimes the most honest thing the universe can do is leave a chapter unfinished. Because returning to it would only delay the next one. There's a confession energy in this reading that I find incredibly tender. And it's subtle, it's not being shouted, but it's there, and it's real. Somewhere in this person's experience, there is a truth they haven't spoken aloud to anyone. Maybe not even to themselves fully. It lives in the space between what they said and what they meant. Between what they did and what they wished they'd done differently. There is something in them that knows, genuinely knows, that what existed between you was not ordinary. That what they walked away from, or what fell apart between you, was not just another relationship. And sometimes the heaviest confessions are the ones that never get made. Not because the feeling isn't real, but because the person carrying it doesn't yet have the courage or the emotional vocabulary to release it. They're sitting with it. And it's sitting with them. For some of you watching, and this is specifically for a group within this collective, so take what resonates. The person who's been watching your socials is carrying a kind of love they haven't figured out what to do with. It's not gone. It's just unrefined. It's like something precious that was handled roughly and broke, and now there's this strange grief about picking up the pieces without knowing if it can be put back together. I'm not saying this to give you false hope. I'm saying it because you deserve to know that the silence is not emptiness. In this case, the silence is actually full. Let's talk about longing for a moment. And I mean real longing, not the performative kind, not the dramatic kind. The quiet, daily, exhausting kind. The kind that shows up when you're fine, you're doing well, you're moving forward, and then a song comes on, or you pass somewhere that matters, or you wake up at 3 in the morning, and suddenly it's all right there. That's the energy that's been around this person as they keep returning to your profile. This is the yearning that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't send flowers. It doesn't write long messages. It just circles back, quietly, consistently, hoping to be close to something it can't quite name anymore. And there's something I want to name for you here that's really important. Yearning without action is a choice. And it's worth asking, for your own healing, not for theirs. What does it mean to you that they choose to stay close in this wordless way? What does it tell you about where they are? Because it tells you something. A person who has truly moved on does not keep returning. A person who has no feelings does not make a ritual of witnessing yours. But a person who is afraid of rejection, of vulnerability, of being wrong, of being hurt again, of having to show up in a way that terrifies them, that person watches. And waits. And doesn't speak. Because speaking would make it real, and real things can go wrong, and they have already experienced what it feels like when things go wrong with you, and that was devastating enough the first time. Have you noticed how much energy it actually takes to stay that close to someone from that far away? I want to shift the energy here, because there's been something building in the background of this reading that I think you need to hear directly. You are not a passive character in this story. You are not simply the one being watched, the one waiting to be contacted, the one wondering what's happening in someone else's mind. You have been growing. Whether you see it yet or not, you have been becoming. And the version of you that exists right now, the one who has survived the end of this, who has kept going, who has sat with the discomfort and the questions and the quiet, that version of you is something to be witnessed. And I think on some level, the person watching your social media sees that. I think that's part of what's pulling them back. Not just nostalgia. Not just habit. But the fact that you're not falling apart. You're living. You're creating. You're showing up in your own life even in the middle of something painful, and that is magnetic. Not because you're performing recovery, but because something real is shifting in you, and it radiates outward. I'm hearing something like, they keep coming back because you remind them of something they want to feel again. And that something isn't just love. It's the version of themselves they were when things were good between you. The lighter version. The version that laughed more, or cared more openly, or let themselves be known. You carry a reflection for them. And they don't know what to do with that reflection right now. Here's what the energy is asking me to bring forward now, and it comes through gently but clearly. This reading is not asking you to wait. It's not suggesting you keep your heart on hold for someone who hasn't been able to speak. It's not asking you to interpret the silent watching as a substitute for real, honest, present love, because it isn't. It doesn't replace a conversation. It doesn't replace accountability. It doesn't replace the courage it takes to actually reach out and say I have been thinking about you and I'm sorry or I miss you or I don't know how to fix this but I want to. What this reading is offering you is understanding. Because there's something deeply freeing about understanding someone's behavior without making it your responsibility to manage it or fix it or wait for it. You can look at this situation and say, I see what's happening here. I see the fear. I see the yearning. I see the wound. I see the confusion. And I have compassion for it. And it is not mine to carry. That's the spiritual lesson that's woven through everything in this reading. Compassion without sacrifice. Understanding without dissolution. You don't have to harden yourself to protect yourself. You don't have to become cold or cynical or disconnected to move forward. You can hold softness for this person's struggle and still choose yourself. Those two things are not in conflict. For some of you, and again, take what resonates in a collective reading, there may be a moment of contact coming. The energy around a potential reunion or at least a conversation feels like something that could surface. But what I want to say about this is, if and when it comes, notice whether it comes from wholeness or from fear. Notice whether it's someone reaching out from genuine growth or from panic at watching you move on. Those are very different conversations, and they require very different responses from you. You are allowed to want the real thing. You are allowed to want the full conversation, the actual accountability, the genuine vulnerability, not just the late-night message, not just the vague comment that could mean anything, not just the watching that never becomes speaking. You know what love that's ready for you feels like. Even if you've forgotten a little. It feels like relief. It feels like something that doesn't require you to decode it. As this energy begins to settle, and it is settling now, like something finding its resting place, I want to leave you with this. What's happened between you and this person is not simple. The connection was real. The pain has been real. The confusion is real. And the fact that they're still orbiting you from a distance, that's real too. You're not imagining any of it. But you are not defined by someone else's readiness. You are not on pause because they haven't pressed play. Your life, your heart, your becoming, none of that is waiting on a message that may or may not arrive. Something has been trying to emerge through this experience. Something in you that knows its own worth more clearly now. Something that understands the difference between love that shows up and love that only watches. Something quieter and stronger and more certain than the version of you that existed before this began. Honor that. Water it. Let it grow. The watching will either become something one day, or it will fade. And either way, you are going to be okay. More than okay. The energy I'm feeling at the close of this reading is not loss. It is not defeat. It feels like the very early light of something beginning. Like a sky just before sunrise, when it's still dark but somehow you just know. Trust what you know. You came here today not because you're lost. You came because something in you is finding its direction again, and it wanted to be seen. I see you. Take good care of yourself. Whatever unfolds next, face it from your center, not from your fear. Asterisk for those of you who felt this reading deeply today, this was a collective message, so take only what applies to your specific situation. Your path is always uniquely your own, asterisk.